Hey people, let's talk about freedom, shall we? So, first of all, we'll break down the details of the government. There is no military police or unit support, and you get the commerce bonus, so +1 commerce on any tile that produces a commerce already. There's minimal corruption, which is absolutely fantastic, because if you have any cities that are like within 3 tiles of your capital, your first 5 shields are uncorrupted, so you can get 1 worker per turn without having to surpass the corrupted shield. Markets and commercial docks reduce corruption. Banks give plus 50% science, and stock exchanges give +2 happy faces. That's on top of the plus 50% happy faces that all stock exchanges give in future and in modern. So, if you can't tell, a lot of the power budget of this government is based in the stock exchange tree. So, market, bank, stock exchange. Freedom gets 200% worker speed. So that's like the second fastest next to order. That means you can chop forests in 1 turn, but you can't mine flatland in 1 turn. And you can also mine hills in 3 turns. Tradition takes 4, and I think it's 5 for equality. So it's pretty fast. You get 2 small wonders, one that produces fighters at ideology, and one that acts as longevity plus Wall Street, like the interest. It is available at the hegemony tech. And you have a draft rate of 2. So what makes freedom special? I mean, first of all, you get a handful of drafts to work with early without much cost. So you're always going to want to rush stock exchange as fast as possible when you're freedom. And the plus 50% off the luxury slider from the stock exchange, in addition to the flat 2 happy faces, means that you can probably draft about 5 to 8 times in your capital without any penalty. When I say without any penalty, what I mean is that just to like make sure your secondary cities stay happy, you're probably going to need to be at about 20% on the luxury slider. So if you're at 20% on the luxury slider and you have the stock exchange, you can probably draft that many times without it needing to increase it at all. You have strong fundamentals as freedom. You get worker speed that is pretty fast, and you have very low corruption. You also get small wonders that complement the government quite well. And make up for the weaknesses and kind of play to its strengths somewhat. You have strong finances and teching. It's a very commercial-focused government, so if you like the idea of making a ton of money, then this is the government for you. And it's got an obvious build path. Like with tradition, for example, I mean, we still haven't solved tradition yet. Like, do you rush temples and draft? Do you go for the research lab chain? Do you go for stock exchange? Do you just go straight into factories? Nobody knows with tradition, but with freedom, you get your damn stock exchange, and then you can deal with the rest. And it's a fairly balanced government, and it has very clear strengths and weakness. As a result of this, I will say that it is the least likely government to be changed or reworked in any way. Pretty much it works well. Like, of the 4 governments, it's the one that's been touched the least. It just works perfectly well since like the 0.7 patch. It's consistent, and it's pretty easy to understand too. So what resources complement freedom well? If you see these resources, it's a good sign that maybe you should go for freedom. So freedom needs good drafting units early on, but not so much later. So in that case, you're going to need zinc or rubber. So the reason for this is that freedom, you get like a set amount of drafts, and you want to grow very big with just those drafts protecting you. You don't want to have to take time, like a detour, to like build units on your own to protect yourself. So ideally, you want the strongest draftable defensive unit, which would be the infantry, which is a 482. The skirmisher is an 862, and that's also good. You get that with rubber, but between the two, I'd probably go for the infantry, which is available with zinc. The reason for that is if you're playing freedom, you're probably either going to want to use the drafts on defense or to harass. It's not a very scrappy government with like scrappy fights, basically where you're just fighting a lot back and forth. You want like something with a good stat line. Like the skirmisher does technically have a better stat line, but this is better. The infantry is better at protecting you, and it's better at like acting kind of like an impy. Like you get in there, you constrict the enemy, you choke them, and you pillage their tiles, stuff like that. Oil is also a good choice for freedom because it gives you easy naval priority with submarines and destroyers. So destroyers are oil plus zinc in modern. If you have a bunch of money, you can just dump that money into bombers. So relative to other governments, it's more efficient to be rushing like bombers and radar artillery, which are available with iron, which you will see right here. So the reason for that is that these units do not benefit from being a veteran, and they also do not get the wartime bonus. So normally the cities with barracks are going to be your high production cities. So you're not going to be rushing units in your high production cities because then you waste a bunch of shields. So that's one synergy to having oil as a gold rushing government. And the second reason is that you don't get the wartime bonus. So just buying it outright is faster often than producing it. So yeah, oil lets you do that. It also lets you project power. Projecting power is very important as freedom because early in the game you're kind of like you're at home, you stay, you don't like plays across the map. You kind of get your own stuff set up at home and then you make plays on the map. And often by that point, like everybody else is kind of settled and is doing what they want to do. And maybe it's hard to just like get yourself over to them. You're probably only playing freedom if you are in a safe position too. Maybe you don't have an enemy nearby. So having options for projecting power, like the carrier and the modern paratrooper. So carriers are pretty intuitive, and modern paratroopers, you just get like an air base near the enemy, and then you can just airdrop your modern paratroopers onto their cities. It works fantastic. So modern paratroopers are zinc plus iron. Iron also gives you radar artillery, and like I said, you probably only play freedom if you're in a safe position, and you want to like kind of harass the enemy, like just make it a pain so they just have to like kind of deal with what you're sending at them, and they can't get on top of you. So radar artillery are good at that. So that's why I think iron is a good choice. I also considered adding uranium to this list, specifically for tanks and a little bit for nuclear plants. But I decided not to because I think the zinc is more important for for infantry. Zinc is also a component of tanks, but it's the more important component if you're choosing to go for freedom, because I think that if you end up in the position where you can just like get a hydro plant or a nuke plant and you want to start one per turning tanks in your capital, or just buying them, then you have probably 2 or 3 teammates. You can just ask them for the uranium. Someone's going to be available to pass you a uranium in all likelihood, and then you can build your tanks. But if you don't have zinc, I mean, you can ask for zinc too, but it'll set you back early on too. So zinc is the more important of the two ingredients, I think. So what land should you look for when deciding to go freedom? So you want lots of commerce, obviously, since you're going for stock exchange. You want a strong second city location, hopefully with bonus food or commerce. It's okay to walk a little bit further than normal, but it's also good to plant 2 tiles apart and then do the rest of your city spaced out. You have relatively low distance corruption and low number of cities corruption too. So you can kind of flex it. More forests is better because you get one-turn chops, obviously, and you ideally want somewhere that's safe and isolated, or a position where you know that you'll have the upper hand versus a single enemy. So what I mean by that, it could be any number of reasons. Maybe they're a strong enemy, but you got like 2 allies or 1 ally nearby, and you know you're going to be like 3v1ing them. Maybe they're just a weak player and you think you can outplay them. Maybe you have better land. Maybe you're just feeling like you want to try to like 1v1 as freedom, which is a bit risky. But it can pay off. If you think you can get the upper hand on them based on what you see on the map, fucking go for it. But if you think they might get the upper hand on you, like they'll be all over you, then you're probably going to want to choose another government. If you have no res near, you're going to need resources too, or at least some plan of getting them. Like maybe your ally can get them or you can boat for them if it's like an archipelago map maybe. But if you have no res near, you're better off playing a more aggressive government and rushing someone, because resources become more important as you progress through the tech tree. And freedom, of course, because it gets bonus science, is very effective at progressing through the tech tree. So you want to be properly rewarded for doing so, which you won't get if you don't have the resources to build the more advanced units. Because in modern, like the most advanced units require like 5 different resources. The further you get in the tech tree, the more important resources are. So what build order should you go for? I mean, stock exchange in your cap, immediately, this is without question. You can mix in like a worker or a settler between the components if you're safe and you don't need to draft early, but just get it done. Don't get distracted, get it done before too long. You can also under-rush the components to save gold. So for people who don't know, when you rush something, it just fills up the box completely. And then whatever shields you got that turn will be wasted. So if you have like 5 shields per turn or 10 shields per turn, that's potentially a lot of shields that you're wasting. So if let's say you have 5 shields per turn and you want to build a marketplace, what you do is you rush settler, which costs 15 shields, and then you get 5 after the turn ends, and you switch to market, and then you get the 5 shields. And so market costs 20 shields, so the marketplace finishes, but you only paid the price of the settler. So you saved yourself 20 gold effectively, and you can use that gold to keep it rolling and keep on rushing stuff. Speaking of rushing stuff, you want a granary in your second city absolutely immediately, because you're going to be busy in your capital building like the stock exchange tree and maybe factory eventually. You're going to want your second city to be pumping out the workers and the settlers. So if you have like 80 gold on hand, just rush the granary. Ask your teammates for gold, especially if they're order inequality. Get it done, and then pump out the settlers and workers. So your capital can also do settlers if you're safe, but otherwise build more buildings. You could do the stock exchange, or obviously you want stock exchange, but you could also do the research lab tree. So library, university, research labs, actually pretty good. And military units that would support an offensive attack would also work too. So ideally you draft such that you can stay at 20% luxuries, but 30% is okay in some spots if you need it. But if you're higher than that, you've chosen the wrong government. Like if you're at 40% luxury, then especially if you're teching too, you're just not getting much out of the stock exchange, because the stock exchange and its components give you a collective plus 150% of your taxation revenue. But if you're high on the luxury slider, you're not getting much taxation revenue, so it doesn't do you much good. If you're thinking that you need a lot of drafts and you want to play it safe, you can go for a Coliseum. It's not ideal. It really does slow down your build, but you can recover. It's like just a small speed bump and then it's done. It's not like losing a city. But yeah, if you find that you have to go to like 40% of the luxury slider or 50%, just choose a different government. Like if you think that you're in a position where that will happen. You want to get a granary in your third city too. Ideally, if you're able to do so, I definitely recommend it. If you're safe, build a ton of workers and settlers in both your second and third city and just grow very huge. If you're unsafe, if you're feeling like you need some more drafts, what you can do is you can build the workers and settlers out of your third city and use your secondary city to draft. Like grow it to drafting size, maybe you get a market or whatever while you grow it to drafting size and then draft there. So one thing that I have to criticize that some players do that I've seen is they focus too much on getting the market bank in their secondary city. Don't do that. You want a lot of cities. You want a lot of workers. People, even in the multiplayer mods, they neglect their workers a lot. And then later in the game, once you have all the cities and workers you need, you can go for the markets and the banks and the stock exchanges in your secondary cities. But mostly for the starting phase of the game, it should mostly just be in your capital. You play to scale, of course, so you go for the late game tech, so you get the powerful units. But there is another strategy, and this is one I've been noticing that Ironclad has been doing. I find it very cool and very effective. So what he does is he techs a specific power spike that matches the res he has, matches the resources he has, and then you just gold rush someone to death. You just turn off your tech slider, and he's getting, at this point, like 100 or 200 gold per turn because he's got his cap up to size 16. And then what he does is, like, let's say his power spike is the tank. He just buys tanks in all his cities. Maybe he didn't get that far. Maybe he only has aluminum and the tech for cruise missiles. He just buys 1 million cruise missiles until he can kill someone. So this, obviously, if the enemy, it doesn't work and the enemy starts coming at you with the super units, like the units that are very late in the tech tree, you're going to be screwed. But if you can get the kill early, it's going to be super effective. So it's a strategy that I'd recommend. But obviously playing for infinite scale, like just building more stuff, hooking more res and going for the late game techs, very effective strat too. Another good power spike you could do is like carriers and fighter bombers, maybe just regular bombers even potentially. Yeah, just anything that you can gold rush. So how to use the F fighters wonder? This is pretty simple. It produces a fighter every 5 turns. It's cheap and it gives +1 culture, so consider building it in a secondary city for the border expand. But it must be produced out of wartime. So you're going to need, if you go wartime at all, I guess, try to plan to get the F Fighters Wonder during the same out of war where you get your factory and your capital. And use these fighters for recon. So the idea with freedom is you go freedom when you're in a relatively safe position, and you can kind of like make sure you're safe and keep an eye on the enemy by using the fighters you get here for recon and for interception, and then maybe some light bombing too. But probably it's a utility thing. They're not like a big combat unit, but they're mostly there for utility, and they're quite good at that. The second small wonder you get is F Prosperity, and this is generally really strong. It gives the longevity effect, and it also gives interest on your treasury. It costs 75 shields, and it can be built during wartime. It really allows you to get mileage out of your buildings, especially things like the stock exchange tree in your secondary cities. Like once you have this wonder, that's around when you start like actually profiting from having the stock exchange tree in your secondary cities. Just make sure that you have enough worker moves to really benefit from it. Like there's nothing I hate more than seeing is that like size 9 cities with like 4 used work tiles. It's just brutal to watch. So, one thing I should caution you about though is do not prioritize this wonder if you don't have space to grow or if you don't have access to consistent access to res that could close out the game. So, if you go for this wonder, you're delaying whatever your power spike tech is on the idea that you're just going to like econ and produce someone to death once you finally do hit those power spikes. So if like you go for this and then the guy who's passing you uranium just dies and you haven't built any tanks left or you haven't built any tanks yet, you're going to be in a bad spot. If you go for this wonder and you don't have much space to grow, like let's say you're on a peninsula above your ally and you can't send your settlers anyway, this is just not going to be very effective. You're better off playing for like the power spike around some unit that you have res for rather than pursuing this wonder. But yeah, in theory, it is an exceptionally strong wonder, especially if the enemy is like, if you know they're just going to stay at home and they're not going to come to you, you can really beat them with this. Hey people, so here's an example of me playing a start as freedom. So what you do, of course, is you take a look around. And let's take a look at what we see. So we see zinc close, we see iron close, we see desert, so we can probably infer that there's some oil nearby, and coal is not too far. We need a lot of worker moves to clear up this marsh and this jungle eventually, so ideally we probably want a government that has fast worker speed. So I think freedom is a good choice here, and we have a lot of bonus commerce. Like look at these 2 beach resorts, and the sugar is just absolutely beautiful. So we can do a secondary city here, maybe one down here too. I think we're going to go for this one first. Yeah, and we're just going to plant on the spot. Nice, fantastic city. So we switch governments, and we just walk this over here. I'll split the workers, and great. So if this was a multiplayer game, you'd check the... okay, yeah, everybody is planted. We know it's because we're playing against AI, we know everybody's planted. And so we can just take these huts and hope to pop. We get gold. Lots of gold, okay. So yeah, this having more gold on hand definitely makes it even stronger to play as freedom. So note that we'll just assume, like if you get your enemy or your ally locations, they say we're like B2, B4, and E12, then you can probably infer that the enemies are very nearby. But let's just say that for the purposes of this game, that we found out that our allies were quite near, and so that we could probably play a bit of a more of a greedier build and not get punished for it. I can't stress enough how much like reading the map during the first 2 turns and reading what your allies tell you is useful when deciding what government to go and just how to play out the game in general. Great. It's often like a good, if you don't know what to queue, you do draft, shift Q wartime, shift Q explosives. It's just a good path to go for. Now we're going to try to pop first before we plant the city. Okay. So, like I said, we do Granary in the second city. Of course, your capital, it's important to remember, already starts with a granary, so don't build a granary in your capital. And what do we want? We want probably to go straight for marketplace here, so let's do that. Oh, wow, he just popped. Fuck that guy. So, of course, your allies will probably give you gold if you're freedom. So to simulate that, we might actually bully them for gold. Yeah, let's do like that. Okay, sounds good. We're going to flex this tile right... Oh, okay, yeah, this is fine. Okay. It's important that you have the 1 per turn growth. I thought that this was a desert for a sec. And yeah, because we want the city to grow next turn. So yeah, we can probably rush that next turn, and I'll show you a bit about that. So where do we want this worker to go? We have this tile right here. We could actually honestly, yeah, let's mine this. And we'll contact China and get a little bit more gold from them. Okay. Okay, it looks like our allies are also freedom of tradition. They don't have too much to give us. That's okay. So the way it works is that when it comes to rushing... okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll just start fortifying shit because we've scouted enough to all that we need to scout. So when it comes to the granary, you don't actually get the effect from the granary until the turn after it gets built. So if we were growing in 1 and producing the granary in 1, and we are going to rush the granary, then we would not get the 5 bonus food when we grew. So ideally, what that means is that you want to ideally build the granary the turn before you grow. So don't bother rushing the granary if you're about to grow on the same turn. You might as well just wait an additional turn and then save some gold that you can apply to other things. We could do this. Great. So it's in 7. Okay, so here's where the underrushing comes into play. So right now we have 12 shields in the box. We have 5 shields per turn. The new citizen will be assigned to the beach resort over here. And so that's 7 shields. So we'll have exactly 19 shields. And then we'll get another, 8 shields or something like that. And then 7 shields will be wasted. So to avoid that waste, what we do is we rush the settler. Now we have 15 shields in the box. We switch to the marketplace. And now the marketplace is done next turn. So if we just rushed the marketplace, we wouldn't have enough gold for that, right? But the effect is the same. We still get the marketplace next turn. So that's why underrushing is so important. Great. So we have I'm going to load that because that's pretty important. Nice, yeah. We have the marketplace, and we have the granary in our second city. So one thing I'll say right now is we don't have very high production in Jeddah. So that's why we're going to get a second worker out of Riyadh. Let's actually flex this. Oh my god, okay. So this is some next level shit. So we have 5. This is another underrush. Explorer costs 10, settler costs 15. And we'll just do this like this. And where does he go? He goes, yeah, I'll do that. That's a nice, good tile. Of course, we want the bank. I think 3 workers should be enough for now because we're going to get more out of Jeddah. What the fuck? Oh my god, it got corrupted, huh? Okay. Well, I must have misspoke when I talked about... Maybe it's the size of the map or playing against the AI or something. Normally, if you have a city 2 tiles away, and your freedom, it should be uncorrupted. But I messed up my math there, so... But yeah, as you can tell, that having that 5 shield mark in your second city is super important. Because not only does it give you 1 worker per turn, but it's also a nice clean number for underrushing. So if you're rushing something that costs 20 shields, you rush something that costs 15 shields instead, and then you have 5 shields and you get the 20 shield thing. If you have 4 shields per turn, it doesn't work. So having the breakpoint of 5 and 10 is super important. So 10 is a nice one to have in your capital when you're underrushing his freedom. This is not a fantastic city, but we'll just kind of go with it. Yeah, okay, so this one should be fine. Okay, and we get the bank next turn here. Yeah, we don't even have to underrush it. That's nice. Okay. So we want to hook the zinc, but we don't have the tech we don't have the industrialization tech, so it's not super important. Okay, here's our bank. And we're at 10%. Oh, we're actually already at 20, huh? Okay, we'll do this. And we'll start rooting towards that zinc. And of course, stock exchange. So I think we have enough workers. So if you have 10 shields per turn in your capital, the correct underrush for... we're actually going to go momentarily to 30. Again, the underrush for settler is explorer. And the underrush for stock exchange is Coliseum. Coliseum costs 40, and stock exchange costs 50. Okay, so here we go. Nice, we got that power spike. We don't have enough work tiles to really benefit from being... size 7, so we're going to keep drafting here. And what do you guys think? Should we go for... Yeah, let's go for factory. Yeah, as you see, we're pulling in a lot of gold per turn. And the underrush for factory is recycling center. So that one's not quite ready just yet. We'll wait one more turn before drafting, I think. Oh, we don't have the industrialization tech. Yeah, so you tech a little bit faster in multiplayer. There's a bug that makes tech a bit faster in multiplayer. But yeah, you'd have to like put it in like 40% or something. If you wanted to, you could disband partisan if you really wanted that power spike. Yeah, if we're alone, I'd probably actually do that. If we're like, these are our allies. So we rush this, factory. Might even pass the cow tile. Yeah, I think you need 15 shields, so we're probably gonna... Is that how it works? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, it's exactly 15 shields, I think. Sweet. Oh yeah, and at this point we have actually 1 per turn growth. So there is a benefit to doing floodplain starts. If we wanted to, we could invest the gold here into another granary, but these two cities, they're not fantastic. I'd prefer my secondary city with the granary to be here. And of course, afterwards you want hydro plant. You might want to look to get the uranium plant, the nuke plant, if you have uranium near, but be concerned that does require the industry tech. So you have to kind of plan around that. But of course, you probably want to go in this teching direction if you're playing as freedom. So some of the other governments, they might like to go down here. Order definitely likes to go down here and up here. And so does tradition, but freedom likes to go right down the middle. So industry is kind of on the way, so definitely have an eye on that. Like maybe the Ottomans could pass us the uranium here in Edirne and give it to us. Okay. Yeah, we still don't have a secondary drafting city, so I'm going to keep this one building workers. Do not stop building workers and settlers if you're safe and able to do so, unless you're ready to close out the game. And of course, keep pumping that population higher. Nice. And okay, so this is double tobacco. Tobacco gives a lot of commerce, and that's why I'm prioritizing it as a really good city spot. In fact, I probably should have put this one over here. It was just kind of hard because I didn't have the worker moves in this direction. I didn't have these tiles roaded, so that it was going there slowly, and this tile already was roaded. I thought there'd be something good around here, but there wasn't, so that wasn't the best idea. But yeah, we can just rush the granary here. Okay, here's industrialization. So now we can draft infantry. 482s. So let's say the enemy was purple. We could just go send them at purple because we are confident that we're in a safe position. If purple colonied that coal, then they could convoy us, or yeah, that's pretty much everything they could do because they don't have any of the res that will give them planes, and they don't have, or helicopters. And they don't have like the res for calves or anything. As long as we like keep an eye on what they're sending towards us, we should be pretty safe, and we can just like dump most of our units over there. Of course, we might have to worry about people up here convoying us, but that can wait for another time. Ooh, was there a... Aha. Yeah, so this is a city we'd definitely like to rush a Granary. It's going to get done next turn. Nice. So we can actually do a library while we continue to draft. It's good to just have a bunch of drafts on hand. So we're actually, no, that was a bad idea because now we're going to need 30% of the luxury slider. We can fix that with a library though. Great, and I'd recommend doing these like as long as you're getting them one per turn. Yeah, so the library gives +1 happiness in this, so we can actually turn this back down. And of course, as we continue to work the tiles, we're going to get more commerce. If we can do an aggressive plant over here. Ideally, we'd like to have worker moves in this direction, but I haven't been paying too close attention. And hospital. So one thing I think I neglected to mention is that the way that unit support works in Freedom, you actually do get some unit support, but only when you're size 13 or higher. Yeah. So since you have a bunch of units like workers and settlers or explorers or whatever, you effectively get 5 gold per turn if you get your hospital and you get to size 13. So it's definitely worth doing. Yeah, sorry, I've kind of neglected some of these secondary cities. Ideally, ideally we'd want to save gold and start buying like granaries and build a bunch of workers and stuff. And if we're feeling unsafe, like if we feel that we've overexpanded, that's when you convert those cities into drafting cities because they're all on rivers. And that's the added synergy of Freedom, that you probably only want to go Freedom if you have a bunch of commerce, so probably a bunch of rivers. And then if you have a bunch of rivers, you can do that kind of convert the growth city into a drafting city without needing to build an aqueduct. Yeah, so this is what I mean. You can mostly get by at... Ooh. Come on. Oh, what? Yeah, there we go. Okay, and now we set it up like this. So it'll be growing 1 per turn next turn, effectively. Now we can do research lab. At this point, we'd be looking for what our power spike is. So we have iron and zinc. So we'd ask for uranium, and we could do tanks. We'd go for tactics, which unlocks the tanks. We could also... Iron and zinc would give us modern paratroopers. So we could just tech down here and go for modern paratroopers. And now we're size 13. Yeah, look at beautiful. And we get some actual unit support now. And we're still, like when we turn this off, 88 gold per turn. Fantastic economy. A lot of fun to work with. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.